Samuel Dei was born on September 13, 1906, in Dallas, Texas, into a middle-class family where discipline, respect for tradition, and education were highly valued. From an early age, he displayed carefulness, focus, and keen observational skills, qualities that would later become the foundation of his naval career. In 1926, he was admitted to the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis, where the years of training honed not only military skills, but also character and strategic thinking. At Annapolis, Dei stood out for his ability to analyze situations and maintain self-control, though he was neither boisterous nor attention-seeking. He was a quiet, observant officer who acted with caution. This temperament made him an ideal fit for the U.S. submarine culture of the 1930s, which prized prudence, safety, and stealth over bold attacks. After graduating in 1930, Dei was assigned to the battleship USS Nevada, where he learned fleet operations, tactical procedures, and military discipline. During these years, the role of a surface officer was to follow orders, operate complex systems, and coordinate within the fleet. Dei's meticulous and cautious nature allowed him to adapt quickly, but deep inside, a desire to engage directly in combat and challenge himself was quietly growing. In 1934, he requested a transfer to the submarine school in New London, Connecticut, regarded as the center of U.S. submarine officer training, marking a new phase in his career and tactical thinking. There, Dei trained in a rule-heavy environment. Submarines were to serve as the fleet's eyes and ears, avoid direct confrontation with escort ships, maintain safe distances when attacking, and always prioritize the crew's lives. Submarine officers were rewarded for keeping their boats hidden, avoiding detection, and completing reconnaissance missions successfully, not for creativity or combat bravery. Reckless actions were considered undisciplined and could result in demotion or poor evaluations. This fostered a deeply cautious culture, where risks were minimized and direct attacks on enemy escorts or warships were deemed foolish and forbidden. In the early years of his submarine career, Dei served on several boats, including S-34, S-24, Nautilus, and USS Bass. These missions were mostly training, short patrols, and familiarization with basic underwater operations, with no notable combat achievements. Dei maintained a style of observation, patience, and crew management, but had yet to find an opportunity to demonstrate true combat prowess. In April 1940, he temporarily left submarine service to serve as an executive officer on the destroyer USS Reuben James under Captain H.L. Tex Edwards, a close friend from Annapolis. This was a pivotal moment in his life, giving him direct exposure to fleet protection and independent patrols in dangerous waters. The Reuben James patrolled neutral waters in the Gulf of Mexico, working with British warships to intercept German submarines. This work required flexibility, quick decision-making, and the ability to act under intense pressure, challenges that submarine service had not yet tested him at that level. However, on October 31, 1941, tragedy struck. A German U-boat attacked and sank the USS Reuben James, killing Captain Tex Edwards and most of the crew. Of the 160 on board, only 45 survived. The event left a profound mark on Dei. He witnessed the sudden death of comrades, experienced helplessness against a hidden underwater enemy, and realized that cautious, safe tactics alone might not protect the crew's lives. This loss ignited a fierce determination in him. When war broke out, He would not merely follow old rules, but would find ways to take the initiative and turn the submarine into a true offensive weapon. Just weeks later, on December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, officially bringing the U.S. into World War II. For Dei, this made his combat mission clear: to engage directly in the war, confront the enemy, and turn the lessons of the Reuben James into advantage. He immediately requested a return to submarine duty and was assigned command of USS 20, an aging experimental boat. From this point, Dei began training his crew in an unprecedented manner, increasing intensity, practicing harsh combat scenarios, and testing the limits of both men and machinery to prepare for the real Pacific battlefield. The historical context also shaped Dei's strategic thinking. Before the war, the U.S. submarine fleet was trained to avoid direct conflict with escorts and limit attacks on merchant ships, as international agreements, such as the London Treaty, strictly regulated the destruction of commercial shipping. The primary role of submarines was to support the surface fleet, gather intelligence, and conduct reconnaissance missions. Reckless attacks were considered too risky. In fleet exercises, submarine officers were highly rated for keeping their boats safe and undetected, while night firing drills and direct attacks were limited or prohibited. This culture produced a generation of cautious U.S. submarine officers who prioritized crew safety over direct combat results. Dei's careful personality initially fit perfectly with this culture. He did not seek attention, pursue accolades, and learned to manage the boat, maintain order, and operate systems precisely. However, the Reuben James tragedy and Pearl Harbor made him realize that real combat left no room for excessive caution. In war, Japanese escorts, though smaller, were agile, equipped with sonar and depth charges, and posed direct lethal threats to U.S. submarines. Dei understood that adhering to old tactics would turn U.S. submarines into prey and continually endanger crews. This prompted him to develop a new combat mindset: study the enemy, analyze behavior, and find ways to turn danger into opportunity. In this context, Dei became an officer who was both cautious and willing to take calculated risks. He did not abandon safety entirely, but learned to combine intelligence, observation, and mental resilience to exploit enemy weaknesses. This formed the foundation for his later tactical innovations. Dei was not taught that submarines could proactively attack escorts, but he realized that by seizing critical moments, courage combined with calculated skill could achieve victory. From this, he developed a unique leadership style, training crews to prepare for extreme scenarios, maintaining steel-like morale under pressure, and not fearing direct confrontation with the enemy. Dei's early life and pre-war military context shaped him into a man who was simultaneously cautious, decisive, and innovative. The combination of carefulness, strict discipline, analytical ability, and experience of tragic loss gave him the psychological foundation to make bold decisions on the battlefield. When USS Harder was entrusted to him, Dei was not just a submarine commander, but a pioneer ready to challenge the limits of traditional tactical thinking. From this foundation, he would develop forbidden but highly effective tactics, turning USS Harder from an ordinary submarine into a deadly hunter of escort ships and becoming a legend in the U.S. Navy throughout World War II. When global war broke out, Samuel D. Dealey faced the first weeks with immense challenges and hardships. Before taking command of USS Harder, he witnessed the early failures of the U.S. submarine force in the Pacific.
Although the submarines were well equipped, the officers lacked real combat experience against the seasoned and agile enemy like the Japanese Navy. Early submarines struggled to identify targets, coordinate with the fleet, and avoid counterattacks from escort ships. Many boats were sunk or severely damaged, creating an atmosphere of tension and sometimes despair within the fleet. Having experienced loss on USS Reuben James and witnessed the deaths of comrades, Dei understood that traditional training and tactics, which emphasized caution and risk limitation, were no longer suitable for real combat. He realized that continuing to follow old rules would prevent U.S. submarines from achieving their full potential, and crews would remain under constant threat. Observing these failures, he began analyzing common mistakes. Submarines often conducted passive attacks, waiting for targets to come close rather than approaching proactively, and lacked creativity in avoiding depth charges or sonar detection. This period shaped Dei's innovative tactical mindset, as he recognized that success required submarines to become proactive offensive weapons, both mobile and unpredictable, and most importantly, to exploit enemy psychology and habits. Upon assuming command of USS Harder, Dei applied the combat principles he had drawn from painful experience. He trained his crew in unprecedented ways, intensifying drills, simulating harsh combat scenarios, and challenging both morale and decision-making under pressure. Rather than merely learning to avoid depth charges and sonar, the crew studied enemy behavior, identified weaknesses in escort formations, and calculated the precise moment to strike. Dei emphasized that caution must be paired with decisiveness, and that a well-calculated, bold decision was more effective than hesitation or simply staying safe. Dei also innovated in weapon usage. Before the war, U.S. submarines had employed torpedoes passively, focusing more on merchant vessels than well-defended escorts. Dei recognized that to gain an advantage in the Pacific, submarines had to strike escorts accurately and proactively, disrupt protective formations, and create opportunities for other boats to attack strategic targets. He encouraged the crew to experiment with night attacks, firing from multiple angles, and employing sonar avoidance techniques that junior officers were rarely trained in. These innovations not only increased survival chances, but also enhanced combat effectiveness, making USS Harder a formidable threat to the Japanese Navy. Another crucial element Dei emphasized was combat psychology. He understood that war was not just a contest between ships and torpedoes, but a battle of minds. The crew had to maintain composure, avoiding panic during attacks or close enemy encounters. Dei often conducted high-pressure training exercises, simulating detection, enemy sonar tracking, or nearby depth charge explosions. In these situations, sailors had to make rapid decisions, coordinate precisely, and place complete trust in their commander. Thanks to these drills, USS Harder developed a crew with iron discipline, sharp reflexes, and fearlessness, a decisive factor in the boat's later success. Dei's tactical innovations were based not only on theory, but also on careful observation and study of the enemy. He analyzed Japanese naval behavior, noting that they often organized escort formations predictably, reacted in patterned ways, and relied heavily on sonar signals. Dei exploited these tendencies to plan surprise attacks, taking advantage of gaps in formations and firing torpedoes from positions difficult to detect. The combination of tactical analysis and anticipation of enemy actions allowed USS Harder to achieve consistent success in offensive missions, sometimes with limited torpedoes but maximum effect. Dei also recognized that tactical innovation was not only about attacking the enemy, but also about self-preservation. He developed maneuvering strategies, continuously altering speed, attack angles, and boat positions to evade sonar and depth charges. He learned to predict escort movements, using darkness, sea conditions, and underwater terrain to remain concealed. The combination of proactive attacks and flexible maneuvering made USS Harder a highly effective combat machine, deadly to the enemy and hard to destroy. When USS Harder began combat patrols, Dealey's tactical innovations quickly proved effective. Escorts that had underestimated U.S. submarines were sunk unexpectedly, forcing the Japanese Navy to rethink formation strategies. Each successful patrol not only enhanced Dealey's reputation, but also reinforced the crew's confidence in the new training and tactics. They no longer feared threats, but learned to turn danger into opportunity, taking initiative and gaining the upper hand in every engagement. Dealey also emphasized post-mission analysis. Every minor failure or success was scrutinized: timing of attacks, angles, crew reactions, and enemy movements. From this, he adjusted tactics, refined training, and continuously improved combat methods. Through this meticulous approach, USS Harder became more than a submarine. It became a living tactical research center, where every scenario was tested and lessons extracted, creating a long-term competitive advantage against the enemy. The combination of painful experience, enemy observation, tactical innovation, and crew training transformed Dealey from a cautious officer to a flexible, creative commander willing to take calculated risks. He did not blindly follow rules, but knew when to break them for maximum effect. This mindset guided every USS Harder mission, turning the boat into a symbol of power and tactical ingenuity in the Pacific Submarine War. The early months of the war, marked by failure, loss, and innovation, forged Samuel Dealey into a commander capable of foresight, experimentation, and constant learning. His transition from traditional caution to proactive tactical innovation not only saved his crew's lives, but also paved the way for USS Harder to become a legendary submarine feared by the Japanese Navy. This was a critical period in which Dealey transformed painful experience into creative drive, laying the groundwork for bold and effective attacks throughout the remainder of World War II.
When USS Harder departed port for the first time, under the command of Samuel D. Dealey, the crew carried not only modern equipment, but also the spirit of innovation that Dealey had instilled during months of grueling training. The early days in the Pacific were far from easy. Violent waves, storms, and the constant presence of Japanese escort ships created a harsh combat environment. Yet it was under these conditions that Dealey's new tactics and the crew's seamless coordination began to show their effectiveness. USS Harder was no longer a passive submarine, hesitant in the face of the enemy. It became a proactive hunting machine, capable of seizing every opportunity and advantage the combat environment offered. The first patrol clearly demonstrated the difference in Dealey's approach. Instead of avoiding action, he steered the boat into waters difficult for enemy radar to detect, observed escort formations, and calculated attack angles based on enemy movements. When a convoy with escorts appeared, Dealey ordered the crew to prepare torpedoes from a surprise position. The crew, trained extensively in simulated scenarios, reacted quickly and accurately. The result was an escort sunk on the very first night, marking the beginning of a series of successive successes. What made USS Harder stand out was not only its torpedo accuracy, but also its maneuverability and stealth underwater. Dealey employed sonar blind spot tactics, using darkness, waves, and seabed terrain to approach targets. Every attack was meticulously planned. Timing, speed, firing angle, and retreat strategies were all calculated. The enemy often had no time to react, sonar alarms were delayed, and escort ships were frequently taken completely by surprise.
Thanks to the combination of tactical analysis, flexible maneuvering, and synchronized crew response, USS Harder consistently inflicted severe damage on the Japanese Navy. During subsequent patrols, Harder's successes were further reinforced. Dei always emphasized observation and analysis of enemy behavior. When Japanese escorts changed formation, he did not attack hastily. He observed, identified weaknesses, and calculated new tactics based on enemy patterns, movement habits, and reactions. Each mission was highly tactical, exploiting surprise and the psychology of the enemy. This not only maximized effectiveness in destroying targets, but also enhanced survivability, minimizing risk for the crew. A key factor behind Harder's success was the crew's unity and iron discipline. Thanks to the intense training organized by Dei, every member understood their role and responsibilities. When enemy ships appeared, the crew worked in perfect harmony. Lookouts reported, navigators plotted positions, torpedo teams prepared and locked on targets, while Dei made the final tactical decisions. This synchronization transformed each attack into a precise symphony, where every action had a purpose and every decision was carefully calculated. Harder's success was measured not just in ships sunk, but also in its ability to disrupt enemy defensive patterns. Dei's combat patrols constantly surprised and unsettled the Japanese Navy. Convoys had to continually adjust formation, wasting time and energy tracking the U.S. submarine. This reduced defensive efficiency and created psychological stress, causing frequent mistakes by Japanese sailors. USS Harder exploited every gap, struck key targets with precision, and retreated safely, proving that proactive, flexible tactics combined with enemy psychology analysis were key to victory. With each patrol, Dei continued refining tactics, testing new attack angles, sonar and depth charge evasion techniques, and recording every detail for future missions. This continuous learning created an ongoing improvement loop. Successful missions were analyzed to optimize technique, while failures were studied to prevent recurrence. As a result, USS Harder became increasingly dangerous, effective, and unpredictable, while enhancing the overall combat capability of the crew. These successes not only yielded military results, but also fostered confidence, prestige, and long-term influence. Under Dei's command, USS Harder became a symbol of U.S. submarine power in the Pacific, astounding both allies and enemies. Its record of sinking numerous Japanese warships and transports in successive patrols confirmed that innovative tactics, seamless coordination, and enemy analysis were decisive factors in victory. Dei's excellence during combat patrols also expanded his influence within the fleet. Other commanders began adopting his tactics, from maneuvering and surprise attacks to analyzing enemy behavior. USS Harder became a model for other submarines, and the lessons Dei derived from combat became guiding principles for the U.S. Navy, contributing to a long-term strategic advantage in the Pacific theater. Looking back on this period, it is clear that Samuel D. Dei transformed painful experiences into motivation for tactical innovation. USS Harder's success stemmed not just from firepower, but from strategic thinking, analytical ability, coordinated execution, and the crew's iron spirit. The early combat patrols demonstrated that a submarine, when commanded properly with intelligent and continuously evolving tactics, could become a proactive, formidable, and highly effective striking force.
After its successful combat patrols, USS Harder made its mark not only by the number of enemy ships sunk, but also by ushering in a strategic turning point in the Pacific War.
Samuel D. realized that a submarine's impact went beyond destroying individual targets. It lay in its ability to alter enemy behavior, creating a ripple effect across the entire Japanese naval operations. USS Harder's decisive, bold, and effective attacks forced the enemy to adjust their tactics, thereby reducing the efficiency of their fleet coordination and defenses. A notable example was the operations around Tawi, where the Japanese concentrated forces to protect vital oil depots and supply routes. Drawing on ultra-intelligence and practical hunting experience, Dei understood that the escort ships, long considered untouchable, were in fact the most strategically important links. Attacking these vessels directly, rather than avoiding them as traditional tactics dictated, not only reduced the effectiveness of merchant convoy escorts, but also forced the Japanese to deploy resources and time. During the patrols from June 6 to June 10, 1944, USS Harder engaged in multiple fierce encounters, sinking at least 3 Japanese destroyers and inflicting significant damage on other escorts. The significance extended beyond the numbers. These actions changed the enemy mindset. Japanese commanders, previously confident in their ability to hunt submarines, became cautious and suspicious. The possibility of a submarine attacking directly eroded their traditional tactical advantage, making escort operations slower, more careful, and less effective. USS Harder's strategic impact went beyond direct engagements. Dei's intelligence reports on Japanese ship positions and strength became key inputs for U.S. operational planning. Accurate information on enemy forces prior to major battles such as the Battle of the Philippine Sea allowed U.S. commanders to coordinate fleet and airstrikes more effectively. The combination of direct attacks and intelligence gathering transformed USS Harder from a hunter into a strategic instrument capable of influencing entire campaigns. These tactics also reshaped the U.S. Navy's understanding of submarines' role in war. Before the conflict, submarines were mainly reconnaissance and support platforms, cautious in the face of every risk. Thanks to Dei, U.S. submarines became proactive striking forces, capable of seeking out and eliminating critical targets, altering the strategic landscape. The concept of attacking the hunter became standard practice, quickly adopted by other Pacific Fleet commanders. The strategic consequences of these patrols were evident in the Japanese decision to withdraw their fleet from Tawi. Losing several destroyers and escorts, and recognizing that U.S. submarines could strike directly and at any time, Japanese commanders were forced to redeploy earlier than planned. This disrupted preparations for Operation Ago, giving U.S. forces an advantage in the Battle of the Philippine Sea, where American aircraft destroyed nearly 480 Japanese planes and crippled enemy naval air power. These outcomes were not due to luck, but resulted from innovative tactics, anticipation of enemy behavior, and Dei's decisiveness. USS Harder also demonstrated the synergy between direct attacks and intelligence. The information Dei provided not only allowed precise targeting, but also alleviated strategic pressure on other Allied forces, from the Navy to the Air Force. The continuous presence and threat of U.S. submarines forced Japan to remain on high alert, expending fuel, manpower, and time while reducing the effectiveness of coordinated operations at sea. In other words, USS Harder not only destroyed specific targets, but also weakened the enemy's overall combat capability. The strategic importance of these actions was reinforced by the U.S. Navy's broader adoption of Dei's direct attacks on escorts tactic. Other submarines began learning and experimenting with this approach, creating a wave of proactive strikes across the Pacific. As Japanese escorts faced threats from multiple directions, fleet coordination and convoy protection were severely diminished. Consequently, fewer U.S. submarines were detected and attacked, while patrol effectiveness increased, generating an overall strategic advantage for the U.S. Navy. During these critical campaigns, USS Harder and Dei also undertook special operations, such as rescuing downed pilots and delivering special forces to strategic areas. These missions demonstrated the flexibility of U.S. submarines and enhanced the strategic value of each patrol. The combination of eliminating military targets, gathering intelligence, and supporting broader operations turned USS Harder into a comprehensive combat tool, decisive in numerous key campaigns. Overall, this strategic phase demonstrated that Samuel D. Dei was not only a skilled tactical commander, but also a strategist. He understood that altering enemy psychology, disrupting defensive patterns, and employing proactive tactics could change the course of the war. USS Harder's success proved that U.S. submarines were no longer passive reconnaissance vessels, but had become proactive, formidable striking forces capable of influencing entire Pacific campaigns.
The final chapter of USS Harder and Samuel D. Dei's journey was a combination of extraordinary achievements and ultimate tragedy, leaving a lasting legacy in U.S. naval history. After 6 intense combat patrols spanning 21 months, Harder had become a symbol of power, decisiveness, and tactical innovation. Under Dei's command, the submarine destroyed 16 enemy ships, including numerous warships and critical escorts, forcing Japanese forces to alter their behavior and adjust their strategies. Dei's boldness in battle created a strategic ripple effect, directly influencing fleet deployments and the outcomes of major engagements such as the Battle of the Philippine Sea, contributing to the Allies' overwhelming victory. Dei not only transformed U.S. submarine combat methods, but also expanded understanding of multi-role operational capabilities. He demonstrated that a submarine could perform multiple critical missions simultaneously, attacking military targets, gathering strategic intelligence, supporting special forces, and rescuing downed pilots. USS Harder's patrols illustrated that a submarine's strategic value was not only in the number of ships sunk, but also in its ability to influence enemy psychology and behavior, forcing them to act cautiously, reducing combat effectiveness and wasting resources. The combination of audacious tactics and intelligence exploitation made USS Harder a strategic force whose impact extended far beyond individual engagements. Dei's famous direct attack on destroyers tactic became a new standard in the U.S. Navy. Previously, submarines avoided fast escorts, viewing them as formidable threats. After Dei's successes, other submarine commanders realized that a well-calculated direct attack could not only succeed, but also reduce enemy efficiency, forcing them to act more cautiously and weakening their ability to hunt submarines. This mindset spread throughout the Pacific Fleet, creating a major tactical shift. U.S. submarines transformed from passive predators into aggressive, feared hunters. However, such boldness carried immense risks. On August 24, 1944, during Harder's final patrol in the Gulf of Davao, the submarine encountered the Japanese escort CD-22. Dei employed his proven tactic, a direct approach, calculated firing range, and launching a torpedo attack. But this time, luck and favorable conditions were absent. All torpedoes missed or were evaded with precision. CD-22 immediately counterattacked with 15 depth charges, striking Harder's hull, causing catastrophic damage and sending the submarine and all 79 crew members to the ocean floor. This ended the extraordinary career of one of the Pacific War's most accomplished submarines and commanders.
Samuel D. Dealey perished at the age of 37, leaving behind profound grief, but also a legacy of courage and tactical innovation. Dealey's and Harder's deaths did not diminish their legacy. Dealey's pioneering tactics were recognized and quickly integrated into U.S. submarine training. Submarines were no longer limited to passive roles. They could strike, hunt proactively, and employ creative tactics to exploit enemy weaknesses. Japanese fleets, unable to fully recover from repeated losses, were forced to operate cautiously, reducing their defensive efficiency and contributing to the overall weakening of Japan's naval power. After the war, Dealey's and Harder's accomplishments were highly honored. Dealey was awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest U.S. military award, along with numerous medals and commendations for crew members. USS Harder received the Presidential Unit Citation for heroic actions and extraordinary achievements. The statistics: 16 ships sunk, including 4 destroyers and 2 coastal defense vessels totaling over 54,000 tons, represent only the surface. The true value lay in the transformation of thinking and tactics across the Pacific Fleet. In 2024, nearly 80 years later, the Lost 52 project announced the discovery of USS Harder's wreck in the South China Sea near Luzon, at a depth of over 3,000 feet. The images show the hull relatively intact, except for the stern damaged by depth charges from CD-22, which caused the submarine and entire crew to sink to the ocean floor. This discovery is not only a historical confirmation, but also a vivid symbol of the tactical achievements and resilient spirit that Dealey and Harder's crew left behind. Samuel D. Dealey's tactical legacy lives on in the U.S. Navy. The direct attack on destroyers method he developed, based on observing enemy behavior and exploiting fleeting opportunities when the enemy committed to engagement, expanded submarine capabilities, transforming them from passive reconnaissance tools into proactive, decisive, and creative striking forces. This approach not only applied in the Pacific, but became central to U.S. submarine training and strategy post-war, influencing generations of commanders and submarine forces. USS Harder and Samuel D. Dealey exemplify the power of creativity, courage, and strategic vision. They demonstrated that boldness is not recklessness, but the ability to calculate risks, exploit enemy weaknesses, and employ tactics beyond conventional limits. Dealey's sacrifice reminds us that great achievements in war carry high risks, yet the legacy he left reshaped U.S. naval combat, contributing decisively to the Allies' ultimate victory in the Pacific. The life and career of Samuel D. Dealey, along with USS Harder, remain immortal in U.S. naval history as symbols of tactical intelligence, bravery, and the ability to create strategic impact through bold decisions at sea. Their sacrifice was not only a personal loss, but also a testament to the power and effectiveness of tactical innovation in modern warfare, a legacy that future generations will continue to learn from and honor.